Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Jimmy Mathis Show. You can hear the Jimmy Mathis Show now Monday through Friday, available for download at 5 a.m., going about a half hour, 40 minutes, depending on the topics of the day. You can get the show on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Check out jimmymathisshow.com. Link to it there. That's also where you can submit your questions. If you go to the contact section of jimmymathisshow.com, put in your phone number. We send out a text daily with a direct link to the program, making it as easy as possible for you to get the Jimmy Mathis Show now 5 days a week. In the Baltimore Sun this morning, an op-ed that I wrote a couple weeks ago, despite positive polls, Larry Hogan may not be a shoo-in for re-election. I wrote this piece, ladies and gentlemen. It was online yesterday in the print edition today. I wrote this coming out of the primary election a couple weeks ago, and something that I've talked about fairly extensively is for Republicans to not take for granted a second term of Governor Hogan simply because of where his approval rating is right now. And you peel the onion back a little bit and you look at really the tails in the tape. Who is within these numbers? Where is that support coming from? Is it with the base? Is it with the left, the slight left of center? And of course, the obvious answer is it's the left. It's moderate Democrats that have supported this governor for a variety of reasons. I was reading their piece in the Baltimore Sun, and they talk about the likability factor of Governor Hogan, which there is a likability factor. And ideology aside, that was something that Martin O'Malley really never got to enjoy. There was a lot of, on both sides of the aisle, a lot of vitriolic hatred that came along with Martin O'Malley. His policies were not supported by even Democrats in the state. But in a state that goes 2-1 Democrat, he was able to limp along through his political career and take him through the city council, to the mayor of Baltimore, to the governor for 2 terms. The point that I've made over the last year here when it comes to Governor Hogan is don't let the numbers fool you. And we talked about this yesterday briefly, but I want to dive into it today because my op-ed is in today's Sun. Despite positive polls, Larry Hogan may not be a shoo-in for re-election. And what I dive into in this piece is there's some variables that were not in play 4 years ago. And one of the largest ones is Martin O'Malley is not on the ticket right now. And there were a lot of Democrats that showed up to the polls and pulled the lever for Governor Larry Hogan because they had had enough of 8 years of O'Malley's policies. Really, what they have had enough of was 8 years of Democratic policies. And this is why my concern, ladies and gentlemen, has been that the party, the Republican Party, at the state level and at the national level for that matter, is not constantly making the pitch on what they want to do, what they stand for, and what another 4 years of a Hogan administration will look like. And as I talk about in the piece, and this is really kind of the methodology right now with Republicans, well, everybody can agree that Larry Hogan is better than Ben Jealous, right? You don't want him, a self-described socialist, kind of, not to get in the weeds on that right now, but you don't want Ben Jealous to be governor. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not a motivating fact. The I am better than the other guy does not motivate people to the polling place. It never has. Look no further than Mitt Romney up against Barack Obama in 2012. Really, at the end of the day, that was sort of Anthony Brown's strategy against Governor Hogan. It was a coronation, if you will. Now, Governor Hogan is not being that arrogant or complacent, but there is a little bit of this is a coronation. And you look at what the Democrats in the state of Maryland voted for in this past primary was not moderate Democrats. So this really isn't my opinion. I'm just looking at what the Democrats were pulling the lever for in the primary. They were not looking for moderates. Ben Jealous is not a moderate. Johnny O in Baltimore County is not a moderate. What the left is asking for right now is extreme left liberalism and progressivism. Not looking for moderates. And now you compound that with the fact that the base, the Republican base, is very disenfranchised, for lack of a better term. Not only are they disenfranchised, I'm being somewhat generous on that remark, they're upset. They're upset about the gun bill. They're upset about community college for everybody. They're upset with it now is a $500 fine if you're talking on your phone, which, by the way, make no mistake about this, is a tax increase. And what the governor is saying, and he may be saying it somewhat in a Trojan horse way, well, I need another term. What I need to do right now is I got to play to the left. Okay, here is a state. Again, it goes 2-1 Democrat. If I want to have a second term, I need to appease the opposition. And appeasement has never worked. It never has. There's an old fable, and it's a little bit corny, but the girl and the snake. And I'm going to read the fable because I think it applies here, and it may be a little corny, but I do like this fable. A young girl walking along a mountain path to her grandmother's house heard a rustle at her feet. Looking down, she saw a snake. But before she could react, the snake spoke to her. I'm about to die, he said. It's too cold for me up here, and I am freezing. There is no food in these mountains, and I am starving. Please put me under your coat and take me with you. No, the girl replied. I know you're kind. You're a rattlesnake. If I pick you up, you will bite me, and your bite is poisonous. No, no, the snake said. If you help me, you will be my best friend. I will treat you differently. The young girl sat down on a rock for a moment to rest and think things over. She looked at the beautiful markings on the snake, and she had to admit that this was one of the most beautiful snakes she had ever seen. Suddenly she said, I believe you. I will save you. All living things deserve to be treated with kindness. She then reached over, put the snake gently under her coat, and continued toward her grandmother's house. Within a moment, she felt a sharp pain in her side. The snake had bitten her. The girl said to the snake, Why would you do that? I saved you. Snake said, You knew who I was when you picked me up, and slithered away. Now, I'm not saying that the Democrats are venomous, but by the way, their ideology is, look at any major U.S. city in the country right now. And the strategy right now with this governor, and has also been the strategy nationally speaking, minus Donald Trump, is to appease the opposition. And tell me when in the past appeasement has ever worked. Ever. We saw it here in Baltimore with Stephanie Rawlings Blake. Give them room to destroy. I always thought that she was taken very much out of context on that, by the way. Her thinking, of course, was not let them burn the city to the ground. If you let just enough air out of the balloon won't pop. If we can keep the riots contained to one block, isn't that better than the entire city? Look at Munich. Go through and through the history of the world. Appeasement doesn't work. And what the governor has done with his first term is appeasing the left, believing that the rattlesnake, which is the Democratic Party, isn't going to bite him, that they are going to show up in the same numbers that they did 4 years ago. And all the pundits and experts out there are looking at his approval rating and saying, look, the governor is a shoo-in. There's a likability factor. He has been some checks and balances to a one-party rule in the state. And he has appeased to the Democrats, so he should be a shoo-in. And in theory, when you look at Ben Jealous, who is over the top left, that's going to take us right back to where we were with Martin O'Malley. Even if Republicans may be a little bit disenfranchised with what the governor has done in this last legislative session, they will at least show up to make sure that we don't have Ben Jealous. It's a risky bet, ladies and gentlemen. That is a very risky bet. People, for the most part, do not vote out of a sign of protest, and they really don't vote as an insurance policy. Barack Obama, back in 2007, 2008, ran a brilliant campaign. And he ran that campaign as though George Bush was running for a third term. And by the way, Larry Hogan kind of duplicated that 4 years ago. Almost as though Martin O'Malley was running for a third term. And nobody talks about the O'Malley factor right now. And it is significant because this state had it with O'Malley. What does that mean? They had it with a progressive agenda, tax and spend ideology, jacking our taxes up on everything. They were very upset about the draconian gun legislation. They had enough. So what does the governor do over the last 4 years? Does O'Malley light? It's not my opinion, ladies and gentlemen. It is what it is. He did more gun control, which at the end of the day has nothing to do with safety, and everybody knows it. And in a very Trojan horse way, our fees have gone up. Crime in the city is still uncontrollable. You have a lot of Republicans that thought he was going to take the throttle back when it came to gun control, not double down on it, and definitely not double down on it going into a primary. Now, of course, do you want to see Ben Jealous in here? Let me tell you something. At least Ben Jealous actually stands up and backs what he believes in. Now, I do not believe, that the direction that Ben Jealous or Johnny O wants to take this state or Baltimore County is healthy or even sustainable. But it really doesn't matter. What I think, look at who the Democrats voted for, not moderates. This is hilarious, too. You look at the endorsements right now. You have State Senator Jim Brochin, who is running for Baltimore County Executive, just endorsed Larry Hogan. And this right now is what the governor is touting as a win. Brochin, by the way, Senator Brochin, was a moderate, in theory, and lost to an extreme left progressive that is Johnny O. And with all due respect, Senator Brochin, a personal friend of mine, and I think was a pretty good state senator, and I really wish you stayed where you were, because one way or another, we're going to have a much bigger liberal in there than you ever were, is now endorsing the governor, and the governor is running around waving that banner as a win. With a very unenergized Republican base right now. I was looking in Real Clear Politics. Democrats used to be for the middle class, not anymore. Of course not. And that is why I think it's a mistake. I could go through and through on that article, but it's fairly self-explanatory. Yes, the Democrats back in the day, they used to be the party of the union, of the working man, of middle America. Not anymore. Who is championing that right now? That is Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been preaching about manufacturing and trade deficits and all these things in the past, ladies and gentlemen, that nobody really paid a whole lot of attention to, because in theory, it didn't really affect them intimately on a day-to-day basis. But you know what? It did, especially here in Baltimore. When you look at Sparrows Point, Bethlehem Steel, General Motors, Pepsi Bottling, look at Pittsburgh, look at Ohio. These cities that were built on the middle class, however you want to define that was built on the working class. And in the past, the Democrats had control over that. And with the more Democratic control, the harder and harder it is for those Americans to get by, to put a roof over their head and food on their table. And it is stunning to me that you have a governor, a Republican white male governor, Larry Hogan, that was able to assume office against all odds because of all these failed policies under Martin O'Malley. And he was able to assume office because he was the antithesis to all these things. And what's he doing now? He's embracing them. Maybe in a subtle way, but he's still embracing them. And all the experts, and by the way, a little point of order, all the experts said that Hogan had no shot of winning 4 years ago. And now they're saying he's got no shot of losing. And you look at these poll numbers. And the pundits are saying, look, guy's polling at what, 70%, Kelly? Somewhere around 70% right now? Not within his own base. But that's why he needs to appease the left. He's got to keep those moderate Democrats there. It comes back to the girl and the snake. Now, you really think Democrats, a party that just cloaks itself in identity politics, that's what they run on. I mean, we hear it all the time. Hillary Clinton, that was her only platform, remember? Don't you want to see a woman in the White House? Remember that? That was her platform, was her gender. So you tell me why a Democrat would vote for a white guy over an African American. And that may sound a little simplistic, especially to the Republican listeners out there, but that is the ideology of the Democratic Party. It's identity politics. It's always how significant and how historic if we were able to achieve X, Y, or Z. Very rarely does it have anything to do with policy. So it's easy to take a look at the approval rating of Larry Hogan and go, all right, that's the forget about it lock of the week. Point of my article in the Baltimore Sun, despite positive polls, Larry Hogan may not be a shoo-in for re-election, is think a little deeper, look a little closer, look at the primary. Forget the Republicans. Look at the Democrats. Look at what they voted for and what they are asking for right now, and they are not looking for moderates. See, they sobered up over the last 4 years with Governor Hogan. And what they're asking for right now is far left extremism. That's what they're asking for with Johnny O and Ben Jealous. If not, Rashawn Baker would be the nominee. State Senator Jim Brochin would be the nominee. And this brings up another problem that Al Remmer's going to have. Party needs to very quickly identify and lay out what it stands for. And we're not seeing it. This is what we talked about yesterday. But it is crucial. And the reason why they don't lay it out, that the party as a whole, is because for the most part, they don't truly believe in it. They really don't. Not only do they not believe in it, they think it is a political liability. They're worried about conservatism. They believe that it is a liability. The proof is in the pudding. Look at what Annapolis did during this last legislative session. They appeased the left. They went to the left just enough. They're reaching over the aisle. They're picking up the snake to show the Democrats, look, we care. We're not bad people. I don't know. It's really stunning to me. I mean, one thing I agree with the Democrats on is not income inequality. I dismiss that. But there is definitely a wealth divide. And it is very difficult to make ends meet in this country right now. No question about that. And do you know why it's very difficult? Because of the policies that are put in place. Look at the Karl Marx Communist Manifesto. Number one thing, progressive income tax system. Number one plank. The more you make, the more you get taxed. It is very difficult. You can still do it, but it's very difficult to move up and down the economic ladder. Well, it's very difficult to move up the economic ladder. You still have the ability to do it, but the better you do, the more pain that is levied against you. And there is no greater example of that right now. I know people think I'm on a soapbox with $500 because you're holding your cell phone. Of course, you shouldn't be, driving while you're distracted. Nobody's disputing that. $500? And this is being levied from a state legislature that is comprised primarily of Democrats that are worried about income inequality and the poor and the minimum wage. Kelly, what's the minimum wage right now? Is it $7, somewhere in there? How many hours do you have to work to make $500 net? How long do you have to work to do that? Can't have it both ways, guys. Now, is, Governor Hogan more business-friendly than Martin O'Malley was? Sure. But again, where is the pitch? And he's not reaching out to the business community. What he has done recently is appease the left. And every time I go down this road, I get in trouble because people will say, Jimmy, be very careful. Do you want Ben Jealous to be governor? No, I don't. And I think Governor Hogan has done a good job of being a counterpoint to one-party rule. which is what we had under the O'Malley administration when the Democrats controlled the state Senate and the House of Delegates and the governorship. You know, the difference between former Governor Bob Ehrlich and Larry Hogan was Hogan really didn't run on accomplishing. This isn't a shot against him, but he really didn't run on accomplishing anything legislatively speaking. What he ran on was, I will use the power of the pen via the veto to keep things sort of in check. And Governor Ehrlich really ran on slots, and he needed the state legislature to get that done. And Miller and Bush blocked him every step of the way. And his governorship, for the most part, came across as a failure because that was what he ran on. And he wasn't able to get that done without the support of the state legislature. Then all of a sudden you put a Democrat in the governor's mansion, and we have a casino on every street corner, ironically enough. But this ties back into the party, and the party's not existent, by the way, all right? I've been inside the bubble long enough to know that. There is no Republican Party in Maryland. The Republican Party is Governor Hogan. Larry Hogan is the party, okay? That's it. That's it. That's the party. The governor really needed, over the last 3 years, to be making the pitch on why we need to flip the state legislature, why the Republicans need to take control of the Senate to make sure, at the very least, it's veto-proof, which it's not right now, why we need to get Mike Miller and Bush out of Annapolis. And that pitch has not been made. And I think that he is very, I don't want to say complacent, because I don't think he's complacent, but you got to be careful not to buy into your own. And I think that the governor and the quote-unquote party is doing that when they look at his approval rating. And they're just kind of marking that off as, at least we have another 4 years. We keep Governor Hogan as governor, and then we figure out what we need to do to sort of reestablish the party once he has a second term. And maybe there's, a large part of the electorate that believes once he gets through this election, then, he is, he's unshackled and he's going to do all these great conservative things. And I think that is a gross miscalculation. And I'll come back to the gun bill. That did not have to go through leading into a primary, guys. The governor could have easily shelved that. And politically could have easily shelved that. Said, listen, this state has been through enough gun control under the O'Malley administration. Is there a problem with violence? Not just gun violence, but violence in America, absolutely, and we need to look at it and blah, blah, blah. But to sit here and double down on draconian gun legislation leading into a primary is ludicrous. And now the biggest win that you have when you're roughly 80 days away from a general election is a Democrat, State Senator Jim Brochen's endorsing you. And look, this is not a shot against Jim Brochen. I think he's one of the more honorable people that has served in Annapolis, and I wish he had stayed where he was. And I'm sure he does also right now. But there's a lot of Republicans that can't stand Brochen, mainly because of his stance on things like guns. And now the governor's office is out there pumping their fist because Jim Brochen is endorsing Hogan. So, look, if the methodology is as long as all the Democrats show up and vote for Hogan, I guess all the Republicans can stay home. If you really believe that that is the way this election is going to go. And the whole point on my article in the Sun today is just look at who the Democrats, not the Republicans, because the Republicans are non-motivated right now. Who did the Democrats vote for? Extreme far-left candidates. Which is why Brochen is not the nominee for county executive right now. Which is why Rashawn Baker is not the Democratic nominee for governor right now. The Democratic Party in this state is not looking for moderates. Again, they've sobered up over the last 4 years. They forgot what it was like to have an O'Malley as governor. And now Ben Jealous is the nominee. And what the party is doing is they're just kind of running out the clock right now. The problem is they're running out the clock right after halftime. And they're only up by a field goal. And meanwhile, you have a governor that is, for whatever reason, petrified of Donald Trump. And say what you will about Trump, but can you name a larger conservative on the big stage right now? Keep in mind, this guy was a Democrat not that long ago. But who else is talking about honest free trade? Who else is talking about national sovereignty when it comes to securing the border? Nobody. Nobody. In a state where we embrace sanctuary status, and however officially you want to articulate that, but that is what it is. 3 years after the riots, homicide unacceptable, to the point where the murder rate in this state has become a punchline on late night talk shows. And the winning strategy is appeasement to the left. Now, I don't know. Maybe it is a gift with Ben Jealous that he is so extreme. He's so far to the left. I don't know. Maybe that is a winning strategy. Maybe that will energize the right. Maybe he'll scare enough people that they show up in a non-presidential year and go, we just got to make sure we don't have Ben Jealous. But again, ladies and gentlemen, you'll look at right now what the left is asking for. And this is the frustration that I have all the time. We got to be making the pitch on what we stand for and what conservatism is. And what I'm seeing right now with this governor's race is just a continuation of the fear. The fear that the party has when it comes to standing up for any core beliefs. And I guess, with all due respect, the governor's taking it a step further. It's just not standing up for it. It's surrendering. And by definition, that's what he did with this ridiculous gun bill. And then you look at Ben Jealous or Johnny O or any of these to the far left. They're embracing what they believe in. See, they're not afraid of it. They're not afraid of it. And it's worked for them. And they've won elections. So if you get a chance today, it's my piece. It's in the Baltimore Sun. I'm glad the Sun ran it. I appreciate that. Despite positive polls, Larry Hogan may not be a shoo-in for re-election. You can also get the piece. I've linked to it in the commentary section of the JimmyMathisShow.com. Follow me on Facebook, on Twitter. Go to JimmyMathisShow.com. You can get all the podcasts there. It's also on Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We're doing it on Facebook, on Twitter, sending links out every morning at 5 a.m. And I would be remiss if you're out in Towson, swing by Bread and Circuses. Say hi to Steve and Martha. Tell them that Jimmy Mathis sent you, good friends of the show. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday at 5 a.m. God bless. Bye.